Good for Mike Lee shredding this complete imbecile in front of the country. You know nothing about your own investigation, but now you're here to give us your opinion on an investigation you know nothing about. So Jim Comey, disgraced FBI director, goes up to Capitol Hill yesterday to answer questions about the revelations we discussed on yesterday's show that we now know Hillary Clinton invented the collusion hoax. Donald Trump's colluding with the Russians. That was a Hillary Clinton fabrication and her team. We now know Jim Comey's FBI knew about that Hillary made up the whole thing. We now know the Russians knew about that too. And we now know Jim Comey not only did nothing about Hillary using Russian disinformation to create a collusion hoax, but actually had Donald Trump investigated for the hoax he knew Hillary Clinton invented. Does that sum this thing up? Yeah. So they get Jim Comey, disgraced fraud liar, up to Capitol Hill. This guy's about 7 feet tall of garbage. He really is. You ever see him in person? Garbage doesn't usually stack that high. In Jim Comey's case, it absolutely does. So Just the News, John Solomon's terrific website, by the way, which has a great video account on Rumble too. I just want to throw that in there. Just the News has a great piece about this, and I've got some video for you, which is pretty damning to say the least. John Solomon, James Comey's no clue routine on the Russia probe exposes an FBI in distress. Gee, you think? So I just told you Comey knew Hillary made up the collusion hoax, knew the Russians knew about it, knew the Russians were using disinformation because Hillary's looking for fake information on Trump and Russia. And Comey decides, yes, let's investigate Donald Trump. But when asked about this yesterday, John Solomon covers this in his piece. Jim Comey, unbelievably, Joe, who wrote a book on this, it seems to have retro and anterograde amnesia. Stunning how that works. From John Solomon's piece, be in the show notes today. Here's Comey, quote, "That doesn't ring any bells with me." Not a lot rings a bell with you, Jim. 7 feet tall, high stack of human garbage. Comey answered when Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Lindsey Graham asked him about a September 2016 referral to the FBI, alleging Hillary and her campaign may have concocted the whole Russia collusion case against Trump to hide her own vulnerabilities. Amazing how, again, the amnesia kicks in with Jim Comey, who wrote a book on this and was happy to do any interview you can to promote his book, a book full of Comey nonsense. He remembers every detail then. But now that we find out that the intelligence community in the United States sent an actual referral we have our hands on to the FBI saying, hey, Jim, big problem. Hillary's inventing this collusion hoax and the Russians know about it, which is basically an invite to the Russians to give Hillary fake information. Reminds me of that Giphy. You know the guy in the Giphy who taps on his head? Those of you who are on social media know what I'm talking about. That's the Giphy. I need that guy in the Giphy. But instead, Jim Comey decided to investigate Trump because he's a lunatic. Hat tip M2 Madness on Twitter, where I found this video. Here is Jim Comey being asked about the referral where the intel community's like, hey, Jim, big problem. Hillary's looking for information on Trump and Russia to make up this collusion hoax, and the Russians know about it. That's a problem. Here's Comey's answer. And if you're watching on Rumble, rumble.com/Bongino to see on video, you'll see below it, this M2 Madness account was kind enough to put in the referral at the bottom there, where it says clearly that on September 7, 2016, a referral was sent to Jim Comey while he's denying knowing anything about it. Watch this video.
Did you have a duty to look at any allegations regarding Clinton and Russia?
I don't know what you mean.
Well, you say you had a duty to look at allegations about the Trump campaign being involved with the Russians. You've got a letter now from Radcliffe saying that they intercepted information about an effort in July where Hillary Clinton approved an effort to link Trump to Russia, the mob. Did you have an investigation to look and see whether that was true?
I can't answer that. I've read Mr. Radcliffe's letter, which frankly I have trouble understanding.
I can't take this guy. I cannot take this epic fraud of a human being. This man is a disgrace to humankind, not just to law enforcement. Dan, you're being hard. No, I'm being nice. Believe me, the New York Queens kid in me would come out. We'd be thrown off terrestrial radio if I told you how I really feel about this human garbage pile. He doesn't know. Just to be clear, folks, can put yourself in his shoes for a minute. You're all very smart, a lot smarter than this dunce. You're the FBI director. On September 7th of 2016, right before the 2016 presidential election, the intel community sends you, the FBI director, a personal memo that one of the candidates is trying to concoct a collusion scheme with an enemy of the United States, and that enemy knows about it, and he has no recollection of it at all. None. Now, some of you may remember to show you how sleazy this human garbage pile is. Remember a little while ago on my show when I addressed Jim Comey's refusal to get cleared, security cleared? I don't get it, Dan. Why would the Trump administration or anyone want to give Comey back a security clearance? Well, he needs to have his security clearance back to be able to look at these memos like the one addressed to him on September 7, 2016, which discusses Hillary's plot to invent the collusion hoax. But instead of Comey saying, yeah, clear me back in, I'd like to take a look at it, refresh my memory, and clear things up, Comey refused because he's a garbage pile. So now when he says, hey, I don't remember anything, nobody can come back to him like Lindsey Graham or someone. That's interesting, Mr. Director, because we showed you the memo just an hour ago. You still don't remember? You see what's going on? I warned you about this months ago. It's a benefit of being tuned into the show. Many of you are shaking your heads. How Comey's lawyers and them got together and said, no, don't clear us back in. Why? Because we don't want to clear it up. And we don't want you to show us classified documents because we don't want to tell you what really happened, because I'm going to go and testify in front of Congress and potentially in a criminal trial later on. I just don't know. Jim Comey, turns out, doesn't, air quotes here, dreaded air quotes, doesn't know about a lot of things. He also doesn't know, apparently, about the interview in January of 2017, right after the election, but before the inauguration, where they started sniffing around. Well, the interview happened in that time, but I shouldn't say, but I want to be precise in the timeline. January of 2017, they interview Christopher Steele's source for the dossier, the PSS, what we call the primary subsource, where Steele says, I got all my information. The PP dossier stuff. I know Comey knew about that briefing. I knew that a while ago. I told you about that. I even know one of the people's names who was in there in the briefing who informed Comey. Let's go back to John Solomon's piece from Just the News, where they're like, hey, Jim, you signed off on 3 more warrants based on this dossier to spy on Donald Trump, yet the source used in the dossier said all this stuff is garbage. Quote, John Solomon, similarly, Comey testified he either did not remember, oh, shocker, or was not told there were serious problems with the Christopher Steele dossier, and that the dossier contained Russian information, and that Steele's primary subsource had disputed information in the explosive document, or that the primary subsource had previously been judged to be a possible Russian asset between 2009 and 2011. Comey doesn't know anything about that, folks. Sure. So just to be clear, he doesn't know anything about the memo telling him, hey, this collusion thing is a hoax Hillary invented. He doesn't know anything about that. But he writes a book. He doesn't know anything about Christopher Steele's sources saying, hey, this Steele dossier you guys are using to spy on Trump and his campaign, yeah, it's all fake. He doesn't know anything about that interview of Steele's sources either. So there are 2 scenarios here. I know, Joe, you're probably figuring them out. One, Jim Comey is the single dumbest human being to ever sit in the FBI director's office in the J. Edgar Hoover building. Or Jim Comey is a sociopathic, pathological liar. I'll let you decide.
What? Yeah. Both.
There's no option C here.
Right.
There's no none or all of the, well, maybe in all of the above. There's certainly not a none of the above. Here is Mike Lee, my friend from Utah, Republican senator, who's had about enough of Jim Comey. Mike, believe me when I tell you to, Senator Lee is about as sober and restrained a human being. I know him personally. He's a good man. May not like everything he's done. That's fine. I'm telling you from my experience, he's a decent human being, and I will stand by that till the end of time. He's done things for me behind the scenes. Again, we don't always agree on everything, but he's a good man. Mike Lee is, I would say, airs towards a conservatarian, libertarian conservative, and doesn't like the idea of the FISA court at all. So the fact that Comey used the FISA court to spy on President Trump really has Mike Lee, again, a very sober, down-to-earth, I've never seen him riled up for anything, has him a little upset. I want you to listen to him shred dopey Jim Comey on Jim Comey's selective memory. Check this out.
Mr. Comey, with all due respect, you don't seem to know anything about an investigation that you ran. So how can you now, as a private citizen and former FBI director, show up and then speculate freely regarding any alleged ties between President Putin and President Trump? I heard you say just a moment ago. Now, I hope I misunderstood you. Please correct me if I did. I think I heard you say that you still speculate they might have something on President Trump because of how President Trump refers or doesn't refer to President Putin in public. This, of course, takes into account nothing about the fact that sources you've relied on in the past have turned out not to be accurate. You didn't identify the inaccuracies subsequently to the FISA court. It acknowledges nothing about the fact that there are perfectly reasonable explanations as to why one leader would refer to a foreign leader in a certain tone, or the fact that this is the same tone that he uses in referring to other world leaders, particularly those world leaders in parts of the country where we've had some issues. So honestly, how can you as a private citizen now come to us and in your capacity as former FBI director and speculate so freely regarding these alleged ties when you don't seem to know anything about this investigation that you ran?
Does somebody have a Band-Aid for, wait, hold on. No, alcohol pad. Here you go. BD, alcohol swabs. But someone might want to put some salve on that. Alcohol swab first. Swab, maybe a little, Neosporin or something on that. So, Jim, just to be clear, dopey Jim Comey, you don't know anything about anything involved in the investigation of substance. You don't want to be reminded, so you don't want your security clearance about what you did. But then you go out and write a book and go on TV and imply that Donald Trump is a Russian agent, although you remember nothing about the investigation into Donald Trump allegedly being a Russian agent that turned out that he wasn't a Russian agent. I'm just trying to get my arms around that. Pummeling style, underhooks, go for the underhooks, right? I'm just trying to get my arms around that. Good for Mike Lee shredding this complete imbecile in front of the country. You know nothing about your own investigation, but now you're here to give us your opinion on an investigation you know nothing about.
You just heard Dan Bongino.